The Obesity Code. Introduction. The truth about obesity. Until recently, medical and nutritional science used to treat the subject of obesity in a very simplistic way. If in the past you have been told that to lose weight you need to eat less and to exercise more, you already know that this plan doesn't work in practice. Calorie reduction diets don't work for most people because they just cause them too much hunger and anxiety. Although sometimes it is possible to lose a bit of weight, eventually we end up back at square one. Sometimes we can even end up putting on more weight, falling victim to what is called the yo-yo diet. Truth is that obesity is a disease that depends on many factors. We call it a multifactorial disease. And to treat obesity, we need to have a coherent structure that shows us how these multiple factors interact with each other and what role each one of them plays. So in this summary of the Obesity Code by Dr. Jason Fung, you'll find some simple explanations of biological facts and scientific studies that will allow you to know the true cause of the problem of being overweight. You will understand the exact reasons for the obesity epidemic and why people often fail to lose weight. In addition, you'll learn 6 simple steps that you must take to solve your weight problem. What causes us to gain weight? What can we do about it? These are questions that we're going to answer in the summary, giving you a new theory to understand obesity so you can have a healthier future.
Attention! This content is provided with your agreement and understanding that it is only for information purposes and is not a medical service, nutritional service, or any other regulated service or a service that requires personal care and individualization. By proceeding, you agree to be fully responsible to have consultancy with the professionals of your trust and jurisdiction before making any decision. The ideas presented here may not be adequate to all individuals or specific situations. Anecdotes and case studies have a low hierarchical value in evidence-based medicine and are merely for illustration purposes. Each person is unique and accordingly there is no guarantee or promise for specific results. This material is only a subjective interpretation summarizing the reference material and does not represent endorsement to any information. It is not the intention of this material to criticize the original reference work. This summary is not official, not approved, not licensed, nor in any manner related to the original reference source. If you are interested, check the affiliate links to have access to the sources and deepen your knowledge and also to support the original authors. The natugood initiative welcomes you for also valuing education and valuing the qualified professional support to make conscious choices.
The obesity epidemic. We need to understand the problem of obesity. You've probably received recommendations for a low-fat, low-calorie diet. For several decades, this has been the official type of recommendation for weight loss. However, this type of recommendation probably didn't work for you. And to explain why just trying to reduce calorie intake doesn't work to lose weight, we need to first understand what causes obesity. The current concept of the disease has a rather simple, yet incomplete response. We eat more calories than what we burn, which leads to accumulate and gain excess weight. Basically, when we eat too much and we do too little exercise, we get fat. You'll learn that the process is not that simple. For a good understanding, we should look at the problem of obesity from a broader perspective. To find a real solution to the problem, it is important to recognize the immediate cause and the final cause. The immediate cause is the cause that is responsible for the problem, while the final cause is the cause that initiated the chain of events that led to the problem. I'll give you an example to familiarize yourself with these ideas of immediate cause and ultimate cause. You can think of the following. Here's a problem. The ship is sinking. Alright, so the question is, why? Why is the ship sinking? The immediate cause will tell us, well, the ship is sinking because of the force of gravity, which is pulling the ship to the seabed. What is the solution to that immediate cause? We've got to find a way to fight the force of gravity. Now, the final cause would say the ship is sinking because there is a large hole in a hull. The hole is letting water in, and because of that, the ship can no longer float normally. So what is the solution to that final cause? Gotta plug the hole and remove the water that has entered the boat. Do you see the difference? You see that the most effective solution is to solve the final cause and not the immediate cause. Understanding the final cause can lead to real and effective solutions. The same applies to obesity. You can do an exercise similar to this one, and it's pretty similar to what experts in the field have been doing for many decades. The problem is, I'm gaining weight. I'm suffering from obesity. So the question is, what's happening? What is the cause of the weight gain? The immediate cause will tell me, Well, we are overweight because we're eating more calories than the calories that we're burning. What is the solution to that immediate cause? Balance the calories. Make an effort to follow diet. Eat less and do more exercise. Now, the final cause will say, you are obese due to a hormonal imbalance. The hormonal imbalance was caused by eating some nutrients in exaggeration out of the ideal ratio and the ideal time. And having a hormonal imbalance means you can't control your appetite, and that leaves you too tired to get regular exercise. So the solution to the final cause is to balance the hormones by eating different foods and paying attention to the times of the meals. From the perspective of this immediate cause, it is as if I'm guilty because I'm choosing to eat too much, to exercise too little. It seems like being obese is a personal choice based on gluttony and being lazy. The danger is to confuse the immediate cause with the final cause. The actual final cause of the obesity problem is hormonal imbalance. How can we handle it? By eating better foods in the right proportion and at the right time. We're going to get into all the details that you need in this summary. The evolution of the problem. The global obesity epidemic is a recent problem. Because of this, different types of theories have been presented to try to understand why we get fat. Carbohydrates, flour, starches, and sugars were the first ones to be accused as responsible for being overweight. This idea existed in the 1800s, and low carbohydrates were created back in the day to treat obesity. Years later, new theories started to blame eating fats. They attributed the problems of heart disease in the population to the consumption of fat. And the problem is that to reduce the proportional intake of fat in the diet, there is a need for a proportional increase in the intake of carbohydrates and or proteins. And many protein-rich foods like meats and dairy products are also high in fat. So, since people wanted to reduce the dietary fat, carbohydrates have become disproportionately more consumed than the others. And as carbohydrate consumption increased, the problem of obesity also increased. One of the reasons to blame fats for increasing obesity is that 1 gram of fat contains more calories than 1 gram of carbohydrate or protein. The calorie calculations became important, and they quickly developed into all types of new recommendations and diets based on the maximum intake of daily calories. And the problem with this approach is simply to blame the excess calories consumed. Instead, it might have been much better to understand the real reason that calories are being consumed in excess. In addition to this, there's another important factor that caused the fear of dietary fat: the global increase in deaths due to heart problems. The belief at the time was that excessive consumption of fat was basically clogging the arteries and causing coronary problems. And this search for low-calorie and low-fat diets ended up starting new food trends. Companies in the food industry understood that it was necessary to modify their commercial advertisements and also the composition of their products, because the public's attention was focused on the demand for low-fat foods. Because of this, the production and the consumption of sugar and refined grains has increased sharply around the world. We began to eat more and more bread and cereals and pasta. The new food trend was to exaggerate in the amount of the whole grains as a symbol of eating healthy. In addition, to enhance the taste of food, more sugars were added to the processed foods. Because of all this, for the next few decades, the population had a reduced fat consumption and an increased carbohydrate consumption. What was the result of this dietary change? The incidence of heart disease did not decline, and the rates of obesity have increased ever since. I eat less, I exercise more, but I still haven't lost any weight. See if you identify with this story. One day, you decide to start a diet. Probably it's a Monday. You put a lot of effort into eating less, and after a few days, you lose 2 pounds and you feel quite excited. You might even calculate how many days you're going to need to keep this pace to reach your ideal weight. For example, because you managed to lose 2 pounds in a week, you are going to need to stick to this diet and wait 10 weeks to drop 20 pounds and reach your ideal weight. But your calculations don't work like that. 10 weeks go by, those 20 pounds are not burned off. Your fat burning rate has slowed down. Your body is not performing as well anymore. And after all, you're feeding yourself too restrictively, and this makes you tired and moody and more hungry than you can handle. On days that you have less willpower, you're going to fail to resist the temptation. You're going to end up eating more than you should, and then you regain the weight. The story doesn't end here. When you realize that things are getting out of control, you resolve to work even harder. Maybe you seek inspiration by remembering the importance of losing weight for your health and your well-being. Maybe you had the help of your friends and your family, and all of this motivates you to put extra energy into eating even less than before on a new Monday, a new beginning. However, the cycle repeats itself because it's inevitable. By eating little, hunger dominates your ability to make decisions. Your body's tired and you find it difficult to do physical exercise. Sooner or later, you eat more than you wanted, then you regain the weight. This is the famous rebound or yo-yo effect. In addition to returning the previous weight, you still end up gaining more. This might leave you feeling frustrated and wondering, what did you do wrong? And there's a huge load of emotional blame. The guilt gets even bigger when you imagine people around you feeling sorry for you or even blaming you, your friends, your family, outdated health professionals, especially your inner voice. This feeling of failure combined with the perfectionist attitude of the all or nothing mindset that ends up helping you to go back to square number one. Did you identify with that story? It is common among people who follow calorie restriction diets to lose weight. It happens mostly when the diet is based on low-fat food and the use of weight loss drugs. So, it is now time to have conscious decisions based on good knowledge. The truth is that your actions are heavily influenced by your hormones, not by lack of discipline or willpower or being lazy or anything like that. What is your body's response when you stop eating? When you eat less, your body modifies the way you burn calories. And this is one of the several problems of calorie restriction diets. It is a mistake to assume that even with reduced calorie intake, your body will maintain the same calorie burning, promoting the fat burning that you want for your weight loss. Multiple scientific studies have already shown that a reduction in the calorie intake causes an almost identical reduction in calorie expenditure. By stopping eating, the body reacts with two main strategies to keep you alive. First, the body reduces physical activities. This is why you find it difficult to continue your physical activities, your exercises, when you're dieting. In this way, you maintain a balance between the amount of energy that you eat and the amount of energy that you burn. You prevent yourself from collapsing. Now, the second strategy is a hormonal response that increases your hunger. The body asks us to eat more. Then we end up regaining all the weight that we had lost. To make things worse, this hunger hormone increase persists. This means you're going to feel hungry for a long time, even after coming out of the diet. The myth of exercise. Obviously, regular exercise is very beneficial to health, but it is not the best answer to obesity. Even today, many people believe that exercise is the main factor for weight loss by burning the excess calories that we eat. However, many long-term studies have shown that exercise has a minimal effect on weight loss. Exercise helps, yes it does, but there is something more important: your hormonal control. And the explanation for exercise not being the main fat-burning factor follows the very simple principle that the body is very efficient in maintaining stability. Being on a calorie restriction diet makes your body feel tired, and that reduces the amount of calories that you burn. Basically, dieting means doing less exercise. And exercising increases the amount of calories out, and therefore the body feels more hungry. It increases the amount of calories in. Exercising means eating more. And when we exercise, our body will require the replacement of all that energy that was used. If you don't eat enough, you're going to feel dizzy, exhausted, and weak after a workout session. This is why we feel great pleasure when we're feeding ourselves after doing exercise. Obesity is a hormonal disease. Next, we're going to look at a more efficient model for understanding obesity from a hormonal point of view. All metabolic processes related to obesity are led by specific hormones. There are satiety-regulating hormones that get rid of the feelings of hunger. Hunger is also caused by other hormones. All hormones act in our body with the intention to maintain our reference weight. Perhaps the most important hormone to understand obesity is insulin, which is responsible for maintaining stable sugar levels. When we eat and digest food, the carbohydrates are absorbed and pass into the bloodstream as glucose. Glucose is a sugar that is used by our body cells to keep us alive. However, glucose levels have to be carefully regulated. That is the function of the insulin that sets the blood sugar levels, and it stores the excess. The excess is stored in the short term in the liver and also in the muscles as glycogen, and in the long term in the form of body fat. When insulin levels are changed, the hormonal balance is broken and several diseases such as type 2 diabetes and obesity can arise. The key to weight control, therefore, is not balancing calories. We might be eating a lot of calories, but that is not the immediate cause. We have to find a way to fix the final cause, which is to readjust the hormones. Implications of stress and lack of sleep. Cortisol is also another important hormone that plays a key role in gaining weight. Cortisol is also known as the stress hormone, which is responsible for our emotional state of fight or flight. Once released, cortisol causes increased blood glucose, and thus we have more energy available to the muscles. That would be very nice if you would be in a jungle in front of a wild animal. We get stressed and we need to fight or flight. However, our stress these days is not caused by wild animals' dangerous situations. In modern times, it is very common that we have stress caused by anxiety, chronic stress, relationship problems, problems at work, family argument. In these cases, we don't really choose between fight or flight. There is no physical activity to use excess glucose. This gets worse because now we're going to have also an excess of insulin that is released because of that glucose. That is why today we understand that stress is one of the factors that make you gain weight. Even sleep deprivation is a powerful psychological stressor that stimulates the release of cortisol. Studies have shown that a single night of sleep deprivation motivates cortisol levels to increase by more than 100%. The next night, the increase continues to be between 37% and 45% above normal levels. Therefore, getting enough sleep is essential in any weight loss plan. There are many proven methods that help you to relieve stress, such as meditation and yoga, massage therapy, and recreational exercise. Insulin resistance, the real villain. The constant consumption of high carbohydrate foods and stress, therefore, subject our body to high and constant blood insulin levels. These high and constant blood insulin levels produce a natural resistance response. Cells learn to resist the effects of insulin. They get used to it. This biological response is called insulin resistance, which is associated with the unwanted metabolic syndrome. The automatic response to development of resistance is increased dosage. It's a vicious cycle happening. The higher the insulin levels, the greater the resistance. The greater the resistance, the higher the insulin levels. The cycle continues and worsens over time. Persistence causes resistance. Insulin resistance has two major components. The first component of insulin resistance is the composition of foods that increase insulin levels. Depending on what you eat, your insulin level goes up. The second component of insulin resistance has to do with when you eat. Depending on when you eat, how often you eat, your insulin levels will be constantly high. Thus, the two prerequisites of developing insulin resistance are high insulin levels and persistence. When we're talking about persistence, we mean maintaining high levels of insulin for long periods of time. So if you spend all day eating meals and snacks and sweets all the time, you might end up spending 18 hours a day on a state of high blood insulin levels. This is called insulin persistence. It is a huge problem today because now we're eating all the time. Social norms allows us for that. There are many outdated experts even recommending that we constantly eat. See, until the 1960s, it was quite common to eat only 3 times a day. There was not much obesity. Today, we eat on average 6 times a day, including all the sweets and snacks that we have in the drawer in our desks, in the office, in our car, in the bags, in the cupboards at home. And not surprising, this has led us to an obesity epidemic. There is a myth that has no scientific basis that says that if you eat between meals, you're going to eat less at lunch and at dinner. And this idea of eating between meals helping us to lose weight has been proven wrong by 2 points related to the functioning of insulin. First, snacks often tend to be what? Biscuits and cookies and sweet yogurts and chocolates and other foods that are rich in refined carbohydrates and that increase the insulin levels. By eating snacks and sweets all day long, we are creating the conditions to the persistence of the high insulin levels, and persistence creates resistance. What mistakes are we making in our diet? We are consuming too much sugar. Carbohydrates are sugars arranged in long chains, and they play an important role in human nutrition, providing energy and sustenance. Because of their importance, carbohydrates are one of the macronutrients, along with protein and dietary fat. We make mistakes about carbohydrates when we don't differentiate between the different types of carbohydrates. The metabolic reaction in our body is different when we compare, for example, ingesting 100 calories of refined wheat flour or 100 calories containing a lot of spinach. To understand the different types of carbohydrate sources, we have to look at the glycemic index and the fiber content. The glycemic index is a measure that controls the rate at which certain foods raise the blood sugar levels. The higher the glycemic index, the greater its ability to trigger insulin levels. On the other hand, we have the fiber that is non-digestible part of food. Foods that are rich in fiber take longer to digest. Therefore, sugars will take longer to reach the bloodstream, decreasing the unwanted insulin spikes. It is no secret that eating sugar makes you fat. In the last few years, we had a great enlightenment among the population that increasingly understands the harms, the dangers of eating too much sugar. The problem is that sugar is hidden in foods that we wouldn't even consider. We are lacking good food education to know how to detect the sugar sources and their forms and shapes and names. Within carbohydrates, fructose is the most dangerous sugar. Although the name fructose is a reference to the natural sugar that is found in fruits, our intake of fructose is mainly in the form of processed foods. In fruits, fructose is present in relatively small amounts. The problem with the consumption of fructose is in industrialized products like corn syrup, which contains too much fructose. High fructose corn syrup that is present in sugary drinks, cakes, sweets. An excessive consumption of processed sugary foods not only creates obesity, but it can also cause type 2 diabetes and can also cause fatty liver disease. If you want to avoid these illnesses, you should minimize the added sugars in your diet. Don't substitute them for artificial sweeteners. Artificial sweeteners are not necessary. They don't offer any nutritional benefits, and their consumption promotes the need to eat more sweet foods all the time. Proteins should be well balanced. A common mistake is to assume that sugar consumption is the only thing that stimulates insulin secretion, but in order for us to have a complete picture, we should also understand that there are other factors that also affect insulin, and they have been discovered by science in the recent years. During the digestion of fatty acids and proteins, the stomach is able to release hormones called incretin, and incretin can trigger the production of insulin. We must bear in mind, however, that incretins have a very desirable additional effect at the time of the weight loss. They are hormones naturally responsible for satiety. Therefore, we don't want an excess or a lack of incretin. We just don't want to have those high-protein diets, but we shouldn't exclude the proteins and fats from our diets. We need to overcome the irrational fat phobia. Unfortunately, the lack of good information has caused a huge collective phobia of naturally fatty foods. Dietary fats have been blamed for being culprits of obesity and also coronary heart disease. There are scientific studies based on medical statistics that say that eating good quality natural fats is not associated with being overweight or the development of coronary heart disease. For example, studies published in leading scientific sources such as the European Journal of Nutrition and the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition have been indicating that eating fat does not make us fat. But on the other hand, it can even have a protective effect against gaining weight. Because eating fats, along with other foods, tends to make those glucose spikes and the insulin spikes less acute, and in addition, fats promote a key role in the satiety process. So if we eliminate the fats from our food, we're going to continue to be hungry, and consequently, we're going to end up eating more. Keep in mind that when we're talking here about natural fats, we're leaving out all kinds of processed fat foods, for example, margarines and refined oils, which can be harmful to our health. The solution. At this point, I hope your view on the obesity problem has changed radically. We have busted many myths, and now you know that obesity is a multifactorial disorder that goes far beyond the simplistic approach of calorie counting, which is only solving the immediate cause. Above all, it's necessary to understand the hormonal aspect, which is one of the final causes. We learned that insulin is the main hormone that promotes weight gain. Therefore, the most sensible thing to do is to decrease those high insulin levels. Now, let's summarize a solution to the problem of the weight gain with the steps that are recommended by the Obesity Code. Step number 1. Reduce the consumption of added sugars. Sugars stimulate insulin secretion. The consumption of sugar in exaggeration not only makes you fat, but it also contributes to insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome. Obviously, the first thing that you should do is to remove the sugar from the table. There's no need to be adding extra sugar to food. Often, most processed foods already have a lot of sugar, too much sugar in them. Please read the labels of the packaged foods that you get, the packaged products that you get. Most processed products, both sweet and also savory, already contain a large amount of added sugar. There are some pseudonyms that are used to hide their presence. Sucrose, glucose, fructose, maltose, dextrose, molasses, hydrolyzed starch, honey, inverted sugar, sugarcane, fructose, high fructose corn syrup, corn sweetener, agave syrup, rice syrup, and at the end, everything is sugar. Choose the right dessert. Try to eliminate high sugar desserts, such as muffins and cakes and cookies and puddings and ice cream and sweets, among others, from your diet. You can replace them with fresh fruits, nuts, and dark chocolate, of course, all in moderation. Don't eat between meals. Remember that eating between meals is a big mistake if you're trying to control your insulin levels. Don't keep snacking or eating treats. Breakfast can be optional. Unless you're a person with special needs, for example, if you're a professional sports competitor, it is perfectly fine to skip breakfast and then break fast at lunchtime. Avoid drinks with sugar. The drinks we consume daily are the main sources of added sugars. So avoid all types of bottled drinks and smoothies and soft drinks and any juices with sugar. What is advisable to drink? The best drink is natural water. You can add a few slices of lemon or orange or cucumber if you want to add a bit of flavor. Coffee and tea are also good without sugar. Step number 2. Reduce consumption of refined grains. If you reduce your consumption of white flours, you will have a better chance of losing weight. Avoid processed foods based on flour and starch, for example, bread and biscuits and bagels and all kinds of pasta. Carbohydrates should be ingested in their natural, whole, unprocessed form. What do I mean by that? Vegetables, such as eggplant, cabbage, spinach, potatoes, carrots, cucumbers, tomatoes, greens. They're all natural foods rich in vitamins, fiber, and carbohydrates. Quinoa, chia, and beans are also versatile and natural foods. Step number 3, modify the protein intake. Due to the importance of proteins in our diet, you shouldn't completely eliminate your intake. You shouldn't also abuse it. It is advisable to adjust your consumption to represent between 20 to 30% of your total caloric intake. Avoid protein bars. Try to consume animal proteins and vegetables of natural origin, such as meats, dairy products, eggs, quinoa, chia, beans. Step number 4, increase your consumption of natural fats. Of these 3 macronutrients, carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, dietary fat is the one that least stimulates insulin. Therefore, it is a macronutrient that brings satiety without affecting your insulin levels. You can rely on the help of dietary fats to achieve the feeling of satiety, leading you to consume less and to assist in your weight loss plan. Avoid refined oils. They are obtained, they are purified with all types of chemical solvents. Always try to choose natural, unprocessed fats like olive oil, Butter, not margarine, coconut oil, and animal fat. Nuts, avocados, and dairy products are also rich in beneficial natural fats. Forget the myth that fat of these dairy products will make you fat. There are several studies demonstrating this. Step number 5. Increase your consumption of protective foods. Fiber and vinegar are true allies against insulin spikes and therefore they are protective foods against obesity. It is advisable to consume foods that are rich in fiber because fiber can reduce those stimulating effects of insulin. Vinegar is another protective food. It is used in many traditional foods and it can help reduce insulin spikes. Seasoning your foods with vinegar or even drinking apple cider vinegar diluted with water is generally a good practice. Step number 6. Fasting. To find a definitive answer to the problem of the insulin resistance that causes obesity, we must also add a piece to the puzzle, which is a solution found many centuries ago: fasting. To have long-term results when dieting, you must break the cycle of insulin resistance. We must go through recurring periods of very low insulin levels. The recommendation is to perform intermittent fasting between 24 and 36 hours. Might seem strange, but fasting is an ancient practice. It is a very beneficial practice. Paracelsus used to say that fasting is the greatest remedy, the physician within. What is our body's response to fasting? Well, when we go through a fasting process, the body goes from burning glucose to burning fat. During fasting, insulin levels decrease. Meanwhile, the levels of the growth hormone increase, and the growth hormone increases the availability of fats as fuel, and that helps to preserve muscle mass and reduce the stored fat. Fasting can also help to increase adrenaline levels, increasing the metabolic rate. In short, with fasting, metabolism increases, energy increases, and blood sugar decreases. Now let's talk about intermittent fasting. This is a great secret to reducing weight and maintaining weight. Fasting intermittently. You can fast for short periods of 12, 24, or even 36 hours regularly. We must balance our meals with periods of fasting. These ideas are old. They have passed the test of time. Now, should you eat a lot during your birthday? Yes, of course you should. Should you eat a lot during a wedding party celebration? Yes, of course, these are moments of happiness, of celebration, of being together. But it is also appropriate to have some moments to fast. We cannot be stuffing ourselves all the time. We also can't be fasting all the time. How to fast? Tips for starting an intermittent fasting. Drink water. Drink a glass of water every morning. Stay hydrated. That's very important. Keep busy. That will help you to avoid thinking about food. Remember that hunger comes in waves. When hunger appears, slowly drink a glass of water. You can also drink coffee, green tea, or black tea without sugar. That will help you to suppress hunger. If you feel dizzy or if you have a headache, you can have a bone broth with sea salt. That will hydrate you and keep your salt levels stable. Choose wisely who you tell that you're fasting. Give the necessary time. The first fasts are usually harder. When you're not fasting, make sure that your diet is made up of quality and nutritious food, and don't overeat after fasting. After fasting, just eat normally, as if you had never fasted. You want to integrate fasting into your life in a smart way. Don't limit your day-to-day or your social interactions because you're fasting. Just get organized so your fasting plan fits around your routine. Monitoring is important. Everyone should always make choices under responsible, professional supervision. Especially if you're diabetic, it is important that you consult your physician before starting any type of intermittent fasting. Conclusion. Now you know that obesity is not a problem caused by calorie imbalance, but it is because of a hormonal imbalance. The solution is not just to eat less and exercise more. It is necessary to fix the long-term problem that is insulin resistance. And to address the root problem, you should consider not one, but two main questions: what to eat and when to eat. As for what to eat, remember that you should reduce your intake of refined grains and sugars, moderate your protein intake, and increase your intake of natural and good dietary fats. Maximize your intake of protective foods, such as fiber and vinegar, and choose to eat only natural, unprocessed foods, such as vegetables and meats and eggs and dairy products and nuts and seeds. Now, about when to eat, balance the periods in which insulin is dominant with those in which it's deficient. You're going to switch between moments you're going to eat and moments of fasting. This way, you can lead a healthier life, lose weight, and ward off diseases that are associated with obesity. To learn more about important additional tips that will help you to lose weight, you can visit arata.se/leptin.